Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
Hey, cutie pie.
Hey, Puddin'.
All right, Diamonds Are Forever, 1971. Sean Connery is back as James Bond. What'd you think about this?
It was pretty good. No, I didn't really like it as much as You Only Live Twice, but it was okay.
Yeah, you mentioned that that's one of your favorite ones. What do you think about Sean Connery returning after his departure from the last film?
Well, money talks, you know. I mean, I think that is the reason that they got him back the reason he came back was for the money. And I think that the studio really wanted him. They liked him as James Bond.
And we're seeing a lot of familiar James Bond tropes return as well. Hey, let's talk about the details. Diamonds Are Forever was directed by Guy Hamilton, produced by Harry Saltzman and Albert Broccoli. Screenplay by Richard Maybaum and Tom Mankiewicz. Based on the Ian Fleming novel, Diamonds Are Forever, Sean Connery as James Bond with Jill St. John, Charles Gray, Lana Wood. Music by John Barry, Eon Productions, United Artists. The release dates in West Germany, December 14th, USA, December 17th, and the UK, December 30th, 1971. Comes in at a solid 120 minutes. Budget, $7.2 million. Box office, $116 million. So it's based on the 1956 novel, and let's start out talking about the intro, especially the theme song. Shirley Bassey returns. We remember her classic hit, Goldfinger. What'd you think about this theme song, Diamonds Are Forever?
It was very sultry and seductive. It was very appropriate for the movie. And I really thought that those lyrics are just like, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. I mean, the same, message.
That being?
That diamonds are something you like, something that are always shiny and always valuable, whereas a man might leave you.
Okay.
I mean, that was basically the song. Both songs. What did you think of the song?
Love the song. It's one of my top songs.
Yeah, definitely a great pop song.
And normally I'm not a fan of having the same artist come back again to do a James Bond theme because we love the variety of the ones singing Bond themes. But bringing Shirley Bassey back was excellent. I mean, she is just divine in whatever she sings.
When it works for someone, when it's successful, they can repeat it and still have the same success sometimes.
All right, so this one, Blofeld returns, a new Blofeld though, because we know he gets plastic surgeries. This time he actually got a hair implant as well. He corners the diamond market and he tries to use them on a space laser, and he wants to hold the nations of the world for ransom. So there's a couple things that we get out of this. We were talking about Goldfinger with Shirley Bassey. Okay, this time, instead of gold, it's something else precious. Diamonds. Remember, the space race was on people's minds still. Man had just landed on the moon a few years earlier. So, having a laser going into space, it was something modern at the time. It was something trendy. I mean, it fit. It made sense.
Well, even carrying out the space theme was the moon buggy in this.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
I mean like they got it in the movie, even though it was a shot. It was some people making a movie and they just, it looked like they were on the moon and had the moon buggy. So they just had to get in a nice action shot with that. It was pretty cool.
And we look at James Bond is global. He's all around the world. We've seen him in Asia. We've seen him in Europe. We've seen him in the Caribbean. Hey, how about Las Vegas? It totally made sense. I mean, it fit with who James Bond was. What he drinks, how he dresses. I like the return of some of the James Bond tropes, especially the gadgets. I really was missing the gadgets in the last movie with George Lazenby, but the gadgets return this time. Things like suspenders with a repelling line, a trap if you put your hand in his pocket, it's going to snap on you, fake fingerprints, a slot machine ring. I mean, these are the type of things that, this is to me what is one of the unique things of James Bond.
The gadgets are always unique, and And there are things that we think of as spy elements. I mean, a spy has to have his gadgets. Something that's a little secret thing that you think it's one thing, but it's really something else.
And he epitomizes that. So, great to see that return. The cars, actually, that he was driving as well, we're rolling into the 70s. You mentioned the last movie, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, that you thought it was kind of mod, that had that 70s kind of feel to it, with turtlenecks and furniture that was more futuristic. I mean, things that were a little bit more outrageous in the 70s. So we're seeing elements of that here. I don't really consider this to the outrageous 70s yet. We're going to see that more with Roger Moore. But what did you think about the car chase scenes in this movie?
They were cool. They were really exciting. It was fun to see everything and the way it was filmed and the way he carried it out. I know that they had the Ford Mustang in this, and Ford actually wanted James Bond to drive the car in this movie because some of the previous movies had Ford cars, but someone else drove them.
And that was a big departure. So, again, this was branching out beyond the comfort zone of some traditional Bond fans. A lot of Bond fans think that this is a bit too campy. Some I've heard saying it's like an Americanized version of James Bond. I really don't see it to that extent. I know this movie gets trashed on heavily. I liked a lot of elements of it. I thought it was just taking James Bond into a different area. I mean, it's almost like when Doctor Who went into America. I know it's kind of a weird thing to Americanize Doctor Who, so they had to switch it later on and, put him back in the UK. But I think for a lot of ways, putting him in this environment with these vehicles, I mean, just Las Vegas, this feeling, especially by this point, James Bond has been mentioned numerous times in Playboy magazine, and the connections with fine wine, fine women, entertainment, the Las Vegas scene, casinos. It totally makes sense, that this movie adaptation, and I loved it. Especially the first time I ever went to Las Vegas. I went there 5 times totally, but the first time I went there, I was probably around 15 years old. And that was one of the first things my brother and I wanted to do, was go to Circus, because we had to see the casino that we knew from watching Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh, that's neat. So you went there because of this movie.
We went there because my parents wanted to go to Las Vegas, and we were just tagging along. But Circus, it was totally to see the casino that it was in a James Bond movie. And let me tell you, I went there again. Let's see, the last time I was in Las Vegas was maybe 2000, and I'm going to say 9, maybe 2010, and boy, that place is a dump. They let it go.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah, it's just really worn. It's just beaten down. It needs a total refresh. One of the things I love about this movie are the beautiful women, and we got to meet a couple of them at SpyCon some years ago.
Yes, we met Lana Wood, who played Plenty O'Toole.
Great name, by the way.
Oh. Oh, no, at first I thought you meant Lana Wood, but you mean Plenty O'Toole.
Again, we're having this double entendre theme with the ladies' names.
Well, that's something neat about the Bond movies too, was the double entendres with the names, because like the parents take their kids to see the movies, and the kids probably don't know. They don't get that part of it, but it's something that the adults can enjoy.
You're 100% right. I did not understand a lot of these references until I got older.
Yeah, as a kid, you don't even, like you don't notice. And you might say it, too, because you say it to people, I like Plenty O'Toole. I mean, some little boy's going to say that, and his mother's going to say, what? But as we were saying, though, Lana Wood was very nice. She was very approachable, and she is Natalie Wood's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And we also met at the same con Trina Parks, who played Thumper.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she is still striking. She's in great shape. She's
beautiful.
A dance instructor, which makes sense because she was so agile in that movie.
She is a former dancer, and yes, she was very nice too. And she said she teaches sometimes at Atlanta Ballet. So having women named Bambi and Thumper that were supposed to be bodyguards.
Hysterical.
Yeah, the outrageous camp of the James Bond movies. And since you mentioned too about the humor in this, some people kind of they did think the humor was a little too much. I thought it was okay in this. It made for a fun movie at times.
I think some of the earlier James Bond movies were more serious-minded. You think of From Russia with Love, and if you love that style, you love that style. The previous movie was more serious-minded, less gadgets. Again, this came right after that, so I think it was a shock to some people's systems of what is going on here.
Roger Moore was the one, though, later on that was really accused of being more campy with Bond movies.
Oh, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. Well, again, it's not the Bond, it's the writers, it's the producers. The actors are just going to say the lines that they have to. They're going to be in the scenes that they have to.
Yeah, that's what I always thought, too. And the leading lady, Jill St. John, I thought she did a good job.
Fantastic.
And I believe she was the first American Bond woman.
I never thought about that.
I mean,
really?
Because this movie spent, it's the Bond movie that spent the most time in the U.S.
Yes.
So yes, definitely.
Go figure, yeah. That's a good piece of trivia.
But I think she did very well, with Sean Connery. They had their chemistry together, so they were pretty nice together.
What do you think? Do you think she'd have a similar chemistry with Burt Reynolds? Because his name was being thrown around for being in this movie if they couldn't get Sean Connery.
Oh, that would have been interesting too. I can't really see it. Well, it's hard to imagine Burt Reynolds playing James Bond. I don't see him as that kind of character, right?
No.
And of course, yeah, and as you mentioned, like Adam West was also offered James Bond. But they those actors kind of knew that James Bond should be British or Scottish, European anyway.
Mm-hmm. Now, Lana Wood and Jill St. John apparently were dating Sean Connery at the same time.
Imagine that. Did they know about each other? You can have these things because if they're all making the movie together, and then he might make a public appearance with one of them one night and another one the next night.
Awkward.
So, and again, there was a new Blofeld and a new Felix Leiter in this.
Let's talk about that, the Felix Leiter. There's never an explanation or a reference.
No, there's not. It's kind of like, like Felix Leiter could be like just the name of an agent and they keep getting, or just a name and they keep getting different agents to fill that part. Like the CIA just keeps changing who their Felix Leiter is.
The funny thing is, like when they switch Bonds, they make a reference to it, even in this movie. When M says to Sean Connery, "Oh, you've been on holiday." That was the in-house joke of, okay, you took a break for a movie, now you're back. When George Lazenby said, this never happened to the other guy, there's been a reference to James Bond acknowledging that another actor's playing it. There's never an acknowledgement of a new Felix Leiter.
James Bond never goes, you're not the same guy.
Now, there was a new character introduced in this movie, Willard White, and it was based on Howard Hughes. And the big similarity that we know is because they both owned holdings in Las Vegas. They're both super rich people that had this unique lifestyle.
But what did you think about getting another Blofeld in this movie?
I liked it. I like Charles Gray. I mean, I think Donald Pleasance is the epitome of Blofeld. But now we're used to seeing different Blofelds.
Yeah, I think Donald Pleasance was more evil looking than this guy Gray.
This movie also showcased the death of James Bond in the cask. Whoo! I remember seeing that as a kid and just saying, how's he gonna get out of this? This is amazing.
Yeah, that was a scary scene.
I love that scene.
Yeah, the scene at the funeral home. Yeah, that was an interesting scene. I mean, that was memorable.
And it reminded me of another Las Vegas movie, Ocean's 11. I never hear people make the connection, but that's one that I immediately made.
And Charles Gray, who played Blofeld, had already played another character in You Only Live Twice. He played Bond ally Dicko Henderson.
Okay, two of my favorite characters that I wish they made an entire series of James Bond action figures when I was growing up, because they only had Mego dolls and Gilbert dolls, and neither of them were really all that awesome. Actually, the Mego dolls were awesome for Moonraker, but they were limited. They only made a handful of them. But if they made a whole line of action figures, I would have loved to have the Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint. What did you think about those two?
They were at the funeral parlor.
Those are the two guys that were just his foil through the whole movie.
Yes.
Weren't they bizarre?
They were. They were really different. I mean, great Bond villains.
People hate those guys. I love them. I love that kind of weirdness, their campiness, their bizarreness. And this is one of the areas where knowing your wines really pays off. At the end, when they offer the wine to James Bond, I'm watching it saying, as an adult, as I watch them saying, psh, they screwed that up. They messed up the wine. I could tell just by the shape of the bottle. But then James Bond knows they messed up the wine. They must not be the wine steward.
Oh, yes. So you knew it, right? Yeah.
Remember, I called it out. I was like,
yeah, like,
what's up with this? Yeah.
Yeah, audiences don't always know that until Bond walks in, right?
Yeah, and I constantly credit James Bond to having a passion for understanding things like that. But I just love it. I know that in Matt Sherman's book, he discusses the dining and the cuisine and the wines of James Bond, and that's one of the things that's highlighted there. We're seeing on a lot of levels, James Bond is back in a unique way. I mean, for the flaws in there, for the perceived campiness at some times, it's an enjoyable romp. I love it.
And like I said, I think it was a good movie. Not as good as some others, but it was good.
Hey, let's turn the microphone over to Matt Sherman, so he can give us some more insights, especially on the original Ian Fleming novel.
Hi, StarPodlog listeners. Matt Sherman here of BondFanEvents.com and my new YouTube channel, James Bond Fan Events. I'm delighted to be sharing with you today about Diamonds Are Forever, one of my favorite Ian Fleming novels, one of my favorite James Bond films. Some have called it the first Roger Moore film because it's Sean Connery's final Eon Productions film, his sixth as James Bond, and it's campy and it's spoofy and it's just tons of fun thanks to things like sparkling dialogue from screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz, who we'll talk about today. But the Ian Fleming novel is fascinating to me in that the villains are not the prototypical Bond villains of the books and films that we love or love to hate. As a matter of fact, they're sketched finely and in unusual ways. And by this I mean when Bond confronts the villains in the novel, not to give you any spoilers, there's not the long soliloquy the villain goes on at length about his background and his plots and his genius. He just quickly dismisses Bond and puts him to the torture, which is an unusual departure. And another unusual departure is that the Diamonds Are Forever villains are gangsters. And Bond falls a lot in this book based on his pride. He looks down on the gangsters, the American gangsters. The book is full of American locations. That's one of the reasons I love it. And Bond looks down on them because he calls them spaghetti and meatball eating, sloppy Italian-American bums. And yet Bill Tanner, his best friend in the service, M's right hand, upbraids him and says, these guys are responsible for diamond smuggling. That is sapping the British economy because the diamonds are being smuggled from South Africa, a British possession. These diamond smugglers are responsible, and America is responsible for everything from vehicle deaths to drug abuse, a panoply of sins. And you better watch out, Bond. You better pay attention. And so Bond needs to watch out. This is also the first Bond novel where Bond really tries to cause trouble by throwing his weight around, acting like a jerk, destroying property, life, and limb to get the attention of the villains. We see this a lot in the Bond films. We see this particularly, for example, in the Pierce Brosnan Bond films. It's exciting. So Diamonds Are Forever is an exciting book. The locations ramble between New York City and Upper New York State and Las Vegas and down into Southern California and Los Angeles, Death Valley. And I'm thrilled about the locations for both the book and the film. And I have a tour coming up if anyone listening is interested. We're doing a tour in September 2021. That's right, despite the COVID panic, because I'll be taking people to mostly outdoor locations at our all-time high adventure. And I know StarPodlog listeners may want to get involved. And a friend and I, Stuart Bradley, a very good friend who's a faithful StarPodlog listener, he and I went just a few months ago to Las Vegas. The plane flight was safe, and we scoped out some incredible locations. When I take groups back there in September, it'll be my fourth visit to some locations in southwestern Utah for Octopussy, and my nteenth visit to locations in Las Vegas for Diamonds Are Forever, and my third trip taking groups of people to Death Valley. We're going to see Ian Fleming locations from the novel Diamonds Are Forever that will blow your mind if you're an Ian Fleming fan, and dozens of locations from Octopussy, the 13th Bond epic, and from Eon, and locations from Las Vegas as well. I love locations, as you know, listeners. I love the novels of Ian Fleming. Let's talk about the Diamonds Are Forever movie. Is it a departure from the novel? Absolutely. It's taking some of the raw elements of the novel that are super cool, that make it a stellar novel, like Wint and Kid, the villainous pair, homosexual lovers, the most vicious of killers, and they play around with scorpions. And so that's sort of lifted from the opening and closing pages of the Bond novel Diamonds Are Forever, the scorpions in the South African desert. And recently, I found the location where Wint and Kid did their scene in Diamonds Are Forever. I researched, and I checked it with actor Bruce Glover, a friend of mine who starred as Mr. Wint in Diamonds Are Forever, starring alongside Sean Connery. And I spent a long time looking for this location because we knew it's supposed to be someplace doubling for South Africa, but memory wasn't saying, the internet wasn't saying if this was done in California, if this was done in Greater Las Vegas, and I found the location in Greater Las Vegas. And somebody else said they found it as well and pinpointed it a little bit different than me, but we were both on the same north-south line where we think the scene was filmed, where we think the scorpion was put down Dr. Tynan's shirt and the dentist who was smuggling the diamonds died. This is sort of where the film begins to take off from the book. The book is a boy's own action adventure. It's an early Fleming novel, so it's raw and it's full of scenes of violence and excitement. It's full of exciting characters, and the film is likewise full of exciting characters. One of the best ever casts assembled for any Bond film as far as supporting players. The brilliant Lana Wood. She's a good friend of mine for over 20 years now. She has a sparkling wit, plays the ditzy Plenty O'Toole, and plays her very well and famously. And you have marvelous other actors who are just surrounding Sean Connery, like Bruce Cabot and Charles Gray as a sort of campy, silly Blofeld who gets some of the best lines in all the Bond series, if not the best lines. And a lot of this comes from screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz. And this begins an epic time in Bond where he works on Diamonds Are Forever and Live and Let Die, has a few contributions to Man with the Golden Gun and some more to The Spy Who Loved Me. But no matter how many fans hate Diamonds Are Forever, and the next one we'll talk about, Live and Let Die, no matter how many of them despise it because they want a serious Sean Connery and they don't want a campy Bond or a Roger Moore, fans are always quoting these films. Constantly quoting these films because they have hilarious puns and jokes and wit and lines, and you're constantly at my events in the last 20 years or at SpyCon Atlanta with your StarPodlog hosts also present, you're constantly hearing Diamonds and Live and Let Die quoted. Let's talk about Tom Mankiewicz for a couple minutes, the screenwriter from Diamonds Are Forever. It'll give you insight into the whole realm of Bond. He was a young man. He was a rising star when he was tapped for these films. He was a bon vivant. He liked the nightlife. He liked dating famous ladies, famous actresses, and he's from absolute Hollywood royalty. Some of you have seen Mank, streaming now on Netflix, super popular film, and it's all about his uncle and his father, because his uncle was the Mankiewicz who penned Citizen Kane, widely regarded as the #1 film from film critics of all time. And his father, Joseph L. Mankiewicz, was the famous director, notorious for being an absolutely stellar director, but getting into heavy script rewrites and cost overruns for Cleopatra, the magnificent epic starring Burton and Taylor that was, at the time, the most expensive movie ever made. And there's about 20 Mankiewiczes who work in Hollywood. You'll be watching House of Cards, the great Netflix show with Kevin Spacey, and you'll be watching it and you'll be like, holy cow, there are Mankiewiczes on the production team, on the writing team. So Mankiewicz is a very famous name in Hollywood, and Tom Mankiewicz, or the Mank, was a guest at an LA event of mine. Way back in 2007, he did a private event with us, and we had another Bond actor there, and Mankiewicz and the actor kind of had never met before, but they knew so many people in common, and they just started swapping stories for 3 hours as we all listened. We were so blown away to hear the Mank stories, Tom Mankiewicz stories. We forgot to ask him a lot of key questions about these Bond films like Diamonds Are Forever. Diamonds Are Forever is therefore funny. It's sparkling with funny wit. Probably Diamonds and Octopussy are the films, and it's true for many of you, we laugh aloud the most when we've seen them. It doesn't matter how many times we've seen them. There are 5 or 6 places in Diamonds Are Forever where you're just going to chortle or laugh out loud or even guffaw and laugh as you enjoy these funny films. And they're intentionally witty, and they intentionally scrape wit. I remember, for example, the scene where Bond comes out of the pipe. People love that scene. He's been buried by a pipe in the Nevada desert with Wynton Kidd. They put him away to be buried alive. A horrible, scary death. Bond has worked his way out of the pipe very cleverly by breaking the drone that's inside the pipe, cleaning and welding the pipe, and the men come out to fix it. Bond gets out of the pipe, and what does he say? Let's see if we can remember. He says something like, "Good evening, gentlemen. I'm with the Acme Pollution Company. We're cleaning up the world, and we thought this would be a good place to begin. Or I'm just out walking my rat," and so on. All this just silly, campy humor, but it played really well with audiences at the time, and it still plays well. And the scene is only in the film a short time. We see Wynton Kidd burying Bond at night. We see them coming out of a hidden tunnel somewhere in the Nevada desert, only they've added some cacti to the scene. We see them burying Bond in the pipe. Then we see the pipe company come and work for about 30 seconds and weld the sections of the pipe together in a mysterious mountain range area, and then Bond gets out of the pipe. And to my delight, I found all those places. Took a group there in 2019 because we had a large group of about 30 fans with us on tour in the desert, took them to the scene, was back there again with Stuart just a few months ago. Stuart Bradley, a lot of you know him. He's been on many Bond adventures with me and with others. And we're getting ready to take fans there again this September for our all-time high adventure tour. Locations never get old. If you can't afford props, enjoy the locations, I always say. I've been to some Bond locations more than a dozen times. I've been to New Orleans 8 times, and every time I'm there, at least once, if not many more times, I stop by what was the Filet of Soul, which we'll talk about from The That Die. And it never gets old. It's so much fun to go to a Bond location and imagine Roger Moore or Sean Connery there, along with 100 crew and 100 press and thousands of onlookers watching. It's exciting. And I enjoy the locations because Diamonds Are Forever is a film where I can't really enjoy the genuine props. Very few have survived. These many years ago, people didn't keep the props. They didn't know they would have collectible value. Props would get used on other films. Props would get reused. Props would get destroyed. So it's one of the films that I've done some replica props from. I found the type of cut glass that was used for the diamonds in the film Diamonds Are Forever, sourced it from the 1960s and 70s, and made myself a diamond display like Bond sees at the beginning of the film. The Diamonds Are Forever plaques are nowhere to be found. They weren't real casino plaques. They were just Eon little pieces of plastic, production made. So I commissioned a very talented friend, and we made Diamonds Are Forever plaques. I even made fantasy plaques of my own design from the novel Diamonds Are Forever, because Bond gambles in the casino in the novel. And so it's a never-ending circle, replica props, fun, book collecting, locations. And again, a few months ago in Nevada, I took Stuart to the Boulder Hotel and Casino, which is not on the Strip at all. And he's like, "What are we doing out here east of town?" And I said, "Well, this is the parking lot where Bond goes after his driver, Ernie Curio, gets shot in the novel Diamonds Are Forever." It's amazing to find novel locations. Ian Fleming used real-world locations and brands, as you know. So a bit all over the place there, but if you want to get a better look at this most fascinating Fleming novel and fascinating film, not only do I recommend great assets like the StarPod Logcasts, but the Many Facets of Diamonds Are Forever book, which was a series of essays developed as longer essays and book chapters by my friend Dr. Oliver Buckton of Florida Atlantic University. The Many Facets of Diamonds Are Forever book came out of a panel we did about almost 5 years ago now, where we had special guest presenters from the world of academia on Diamonds Are Forever, 400th anniversaries for the novel and the film. So I presented a paper there, others presented papers there. Each paper was, say, 2,500 words in length, and we expanded them to, say, 7,000 to 9,000 words to build a chapter. Then we invited some guest writers, and Dr. Buckton put together this wonderful, very well critically received book on some seminal pop culture, The Many Facets of Diamonds Are Forever, as a book and as a film. And it's a wonderful multi-hundred-page book where people dig into different aspects. It could be the food and the lifestyle of Bond. It could be the villains of Bond. It could be the subtext of Bond. And have created this wonderful, wonderful hardcover book, a great collectible, a stellar read. Some of the most knowledgeable Bond fans in the business are on it. And you'll be surprised at some of the names in it. And Dr. Buckton did a wonderful job, as always, of curating these essays. Dr. Buckton recently completed, it's available for pre-order now, a new biography of Ian Fleming called The World Is Not Enough, which is amazing. I've had the privilege of previewing it, taking a look, and it's fabulous. It's written from a psychological perspective of Ian Fleming. It's a new take and includes a lot of new narratives and details we haven't seen before. So, Diamonds Are Forever, time would fail me if I told you all I knew about this book and film. They're both such iconic pieces of the Bond world. The novel is a great place to start. If you've never read an Ian Fleming novel and you want to do a shorter one that's just action-packed, a real page-turner, even above Fleming's own page-turning style, just pick up a copy of Diamonds Are Forever, get it from your library, buy a copy online, Kindle, Amazon. Enjoy it. You'll get through it quickly, and you'll have a great ride. And then you'll come back on subsequent readings and see all kinds of hidden subtext. Heck, we had a whole paper on Diamonds Are Forever years ago about the emblematic effect of the scorpion in Diamonds Are Forever, and what it represents, and tensions, and racism, and class warfare, and a lot of subtext that, as I've mentioned, Ian Fleming wrote with a tremendous amount of subtext and is one of the world's most underappreciated novelists, because his writing was always more than what meets the eye at face value. And Diamonds Are Forever is a fun movie. I hope you'll see it in a new way the next time you watch it. And we know our StarPodLog hosts and their guests have exciting insights about the film as well. And it's a wild ride. Can I recommend to you one more thing, and that's artwork from Diamonds Are Forever. Jerry Wadsworth is a dear fellow, a good friend. And he and Amy are a wonderful couple. They've done different events with Janine Sherman and me in the past. My favorite piece of Jerry Wadsworth artwork, and a lot of you have seen his art at jamesbondart.com, is his Trouble with Tiffany case, magnificent watercolor. And you wouldn't believe what Jerry could do with watercolor. So what he did was he took different aspects of the novel Diamonds Are Forever and painted them, added a Richard chopping fly from the beautiful artwork of the Bond dust jackets. You Bond book fans will remember. So you have on there the scorpion, and you have on there the Acme Mud and Sulphur ticket, and you have on there the case from Tiffany and Company reminding us of Tiffany's name. The centerpiece of the piece is an Echoes of Paris album that Bond listens to in the novel, skipping, of course, La Vie en Rosa, the Edith Piaf classic, because there's, quote, memories for him, a little Ian Fleming throwback to Vesperland. And he's playing music in Tiffany Case's apartment. Well, I have a friend who has the Echoes of Paris album. I've seen it in his home, and he was amazed to see that Jerry had duplicated not only the album artwork, but the record down to its grooves. I still don't know how he did it. Jerry must have brushes the size of a human hair, but I'm looking at an album painted onto the Bond artwork with the individual grooves of the album painted in the unforgiving medium of watercolor. It's a gorgeous piece. It's a stunning piece. It's a magnificent piece of artwork. And Diamonds Are Forever has so many memories for me. The first 10 events Janina Sherman and I did for Bond fans, trying to do these Bond conventions and get people together. At the first 10 events, we had Diamonds Are Forever included in most of them. I mean, we had the Hero Mustang that Sean Connery and Jill St. John drove in Diamonds Are Forever at our San Francisco event. And we had stars like Lana Wood and Bruce Glover at our Las Vegas and our New Orleans events and so on. And Diamonds Are Forever just holds a special place in my heart because, to sum up, it's one of Ian Fleming's best novels. has wonderful American locations I relate to or grew up in. And the film has some of the funniest dialogue in all the Bond films, some of the most frenetic action. It's a crazy piece of film. I broke down the scenes recently of the film Diamonds Are Forever, trying to get a hold of what was going on because there's so many moving pieces. And there's something like 38 changes of scenery in the film. There's so many things happening, and beautiful Ken Adams sets. And, dare I forget, that it is John Barry's, I think, best score, my favorite score, because John Barry, as a composer of 12 wonderful Bond soundtracks, and winner of 5 Oscars for film composing. John Barry's parents were classical musicians, and when John was a young man, he was not only a skilled musician, but broke out into the then burgeoning world of jazz. And so it's got that jazzy, Las Vegas, kitschy feel. These wonderful leitmotifs for Wynton Kid and all the characters. Really clever things that they do. Wynton Kid is 2 flutes playing in the John Barry soundtrack so that there's a Wint and a Kid. All this clever music, dialogue. Wow. Let's sit down. Let's watch Diamonds Are Forever together with StarPodTrek listeners. Let's have a great time. So that's it for now. I'll be back with you soon for Live and Let Die. And again, please visit bondfanvendits.com if you want to join one of our trips, like the locations trips coming up in September and October of 2021. They are still on. They are still valid. The vaccines for COVID are rolling out. We're excited about that. Glad everyone's staying healthy. And please enjoy the new YouTube channel, James Bond Fan Events. We've only been up a few weeks, but we have 27 videos posted going in depth on some of these areas of Bond. Thank you, and we'll see you soon, and hear you soon, and talk with you soon for Live and Let Die.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.